Now that we've got through 10 years of continuous growth in the global economy after the GFC, the question on investors' minds is really around whether we've reached the end of this particular economic cycle or this is more of a mid-cycle pause. We think the latter, and it's really for these reasons. Firstly, inflation has been relatively tepid through this growth cycle. Now, of course, economies like the US and the Fed have raised rates in response to some rise in expected inflation, but we're still at a point where inflation is not necessarily threatening in the US, and certainly when you look at other parts of the globe, it's relatively low. So what the Fed is doing at the moment is really more of a pause in terms of its monetary policy stance. When the globe went from synchronized growth for about 2 years of the last 2017 and 18 to now probably something a bit slower, moving growth back from above trend to around trend growth. We'll need to get through 2019, and clearly it's a slower year in 2019. And our expectation is that the US economy will continue to grow beyond 2020. Now, of course, Australia is in a very different spot in terms of economic growth. We've enjoyed 28 continuous years of economic growth, and investors rightly are questioning whether this is a year where we enter a recession, especially after having grown with a mining investment boom that came and went, a housing construction boom which is now tapering off, and not necessarily a lot of evident areas of growth going forward. I think the questions are definitely right. We believe we'll get through this year without a recession for a couple of reasons. Firstly, there's a whole range of infrastructure spending that the government is undertaking. We have a number of policy tools at our disposal, monetary policy being one, but then fiscal policy, which is probably the more appropriate policy tool for this environment at the moment. So if we can deploy the right fiscal policy with a combination of monetary policy, then the consumer, the Australian consumer, should be able to continue spending at a moderate pace. We've got reasonable business investment occurring outside and inside the mining sectors, and of course our export basket still looks reasonable. So we will trend from above trend growth to trend growth, and perhaps next year to sub-trend growth, but it shouldn't cause a recession here in Australia. For us, the labour market is key. The unemployment rate in Australia is around 5%, but if you look at New South Wales and Victoria, it's much lower than that. And they're really the two key markets where we've had the house price declines. So I think we come from a position of strength, and that should allow the Australian economy to navigate its way through the challenges that we've got ahead.